Hello students, on behalf of Patu Gala College of Commerce and Management, I welcome you all to this video lecture session. This session will be covering the subject research methodology, which is a part of semester 5 of the TY-DBI course. In this session, we will be covering the topic, the research process. Research, as we all know, is a scientific study. It involves a dedicated effort with a purposeful aim. Research process therefore consists of a series of actions or steps necessary to effectively carry out this organized method of research to get the desired sequencing of the activities. So the sequencing can be seen in this chart. This chart indicates that the research process is consisting of a number of closely related activities which might or might not be coming in a sequence. One should remember that the various steps involved in this research process are not mutually exclusive, nor are they separate and distinct. Yes, in the real world, they do not necessarily follow each other in any specific order. However, the given order provides a useful procedural guide to the beginning students, to the beginners regarding the research process. First is the identification and selection of the problem, then the formulation of the research problem, which is followed by review of the literature. Hypothesis formulation comes next, then research design, leading to sample design, which takes us to data collection, data analysis, data interpretation, which also tests the hypothesis. And finally, we start with writing our research report, which is basically reporting what all we have found out in the whole process. We'll see each step in detail. The starting point of any research is the selection of a research topic and problem. Now, the point is that each age, every time has its own problems, numerous in numbers, which is following that time, and you have to either think of taking or bringing out a solution through your research, or at least highlight that problem and bring it to others' notice. So before we begin in our research work, we first have to identify the areas of our own interests. What are the daily problems that are surrounding us? What are the technological changes that are happening? What is trending right now? What are the unexplored areas wherein we can conduct our research? So it is again a process which can be outlined in these steps. First, you need to outline the area of your interest. You need to choose a topic which is suitable for research. You then have to narrow down your topic. That is, you have to be very specific about what exactly are you wanting to research about, what you are wanting to gather information about. Then you have to identify the research problem related to that field, to that topic, and identify the purpose of your study. What exactly are you going to do with the conclusions that you are going to get after your study? How and whom are they going to help in, and what exactly is the purpose of the study conclusions? Formulation of research title is the next important task you need to do. Once you are aware of the research problem or the research area where you are wanting to embark your study in, you need to formulate your research title, that is, word your title very carefully. Your research title should be able to answer all these three questions that are listed out here. That is, what to study, among whom to study, and where to study. So first question, what to study, will be answering about your subject area, about your topic, the field wherein you are conducting your research in. Among whom to study is telling people about the respondents or the population you are covering in your research. and where to study is the geographical location, the place you are conducting your research in. So these three questions are basically going to give any reader the idea about what your research paper is going to tell them about, what new or what exactly are they going to get, what information are they going to get in the research paper. After defining the problem, after formulating the title, the researcher now has to do a literature survey connected to your topic. Literature survey or review or literature is a collection of research publication reading about your research topic in the pre-published publications, books, magazines, websites, newspapers, articles. So you are basically reading what has already been written or researched about your topic of interest. This step provides foundational knowledge about the problem area. It also sharpens and reformulates the problem if necessary, and it is educating the researcher, that is you, about what studies have already been conducted in the past, how these studies were conducted, what was their methodology, and the conclusions in those papers. Another very important thing which you are going to gain knowledge about after you do your review of literature properly is you will find out about the gaps, the points that were not covered in that area in those papers, and the possibility of new research. So, getting the background information, you can read about your topic in the websites, you can read the books, you can refer to journals, books, you can refer to the proceedings of conferences, you can attend workshops, you can see the television discussions, newspapers. So wherever, whichever form you are getting your information on, whatever data you are getting related to your topic becomes your literature part or literature for your research. Formulation of hypothesis comes next. Hypothesis is basically an intelligent guess or an assumption which is to be now tested in your research work through all these statistical calculations and measurements. This hypothesis testing can be done properly only after a good review of literature has been done. Good review of literature will enable you, will furnish you with the experience, with the knowledge of how to word your hypothesis properly so that you can acquire enough data to test it. Therefore, hypothesis should be testable, it should be clear in terms of wording, and it should be workable. In order to develop working hypothesis, researchers should adopt this following approach, that is, you need to examination of the data and records. If possible, it has to be there. Review of similar studies, as I have already mentioned, it has to be done extensively. And exploratory personal investigation is also very important, which can be done through face-to-face interviews or discussions telephonically through with the interested parties or the individuals who have done such kind of similar research work in the past. Only then, with this kind of exposure, with this kind of experience, will you be able to formulate a proper, testable, workable hypothesis. The research design, which is the next step, it is basically the blueprint of the whole research process. It creates the foundation of the entire work, and it is a design as is seen in the slide. It's kind of a blueprint or a diagram which is put on paper to give you an idea about how the whole work is going to be initiated and completed. So the first step in the actual work is to first learn the facts pertaining to the problem. Then you have to put timelines, you have to visualize, you have to make decisions about what is going to be your sample size, who are going to be your population, what are the experimental techniques that are going to be used, what are the tests which are going to be conducted, how the conclusions or how the analysis is going to take place, what kind of statistical tools are required. So all these planning, all these arrangements, and the decisions regarding each and every step which is to follow this hypothesis testing or this research is put down here in a graphical method or a diagrammatical method or in a chart, to give you the idea about what is going to be the research process going to look like and what are the activities involved, and also to put a timeline on all those activities. All the items under the consideration for a research is called the universe or the population. Now, getting data or collecting information from each and every source in that population is practically not possible. And for that reason, we choose samples out of those populations. So designing for the sample is therefore the next very important step in the research process. A sample design is a definite plan for obtaining that sample from the given population. It refers to the technique or the procedure the researcher or you would be adopting in selecting those samples, and it might also lay down the number of items to be included in the sample, that is the size of the sample. Sample design is so important because it is what is basically giving you the data. It is where from you are collecting your data and then you are testing it for your hypothesis testings. So therefore sample techniques should be useful and should have the samples should be representing the population in every sense. Also we have to see that the sampling techniques should have all the required important properties of the population. Sampling methods are generally scientific methods and they should also be convenient for collecting the data, especially when the population is a large sized one. Next comes the data collection. The word itself, it is self-explanatory that data collection is the process of collecting data, preparing the data, and it might involve many steps and other steps of making the questionnaires, getting the contact details of the sample size of the population or the respondents whom you are going to collect information from, approaching them, giving out the questionnaires, collecting data from them either through interviews, through surveys, which might be electronic or telephonic or verbal or face to face. And data can also be, of course, secondary data, wherein you are collecting your data from the previously published data, that is periodicals, books, magazines. So data is primarily collected to provide information regarding your research topic. It is the most, or you can say one of the most important aspects of any type of research study, because that is what is going to you are going to analyze in the later stage. Inaccurate data collection can therefore impact the results of your study and ultimately lead to invalid results. So data collection methods should be reviewed and controlled and measured and observed very carefully. It can be quantitative methods or qualitative methods, and you should be deciding about your method of data collection as per the nature of your research problem and also as per the availability of the respondents or the availability of the data. Once you have collected the data, next comes the analysis part, the interpretation part. Analysis of data is basically meaning that you are inspecting, you are cleaning, you are transforming, and that modeling the data which is you have collected. Why you are processing it? You are processing it so that the data becomes information, so that that information gives you knowledge, and that knowledge helps you to suggest conclusions through your research work. So data analysis involves many kinds of mathematical and statistical testing, calculations, and it also has social science techniques, It is a process of systematically applying these techniques to describe, to illustrate, to clean, to condense, and to visually present the data in such a manner that you are now able to draw your conclusions. Hypothesis testing and data interpretation is done once the data has been analyzed, it has been cleaned and organized in such a manner that the tests like chi-square test, t-test, f-test, all these can be now applied by the statisticians or the researchers. And only then you can now start testing your hypothesis, which was your primarily objective was to test your hypothesis. So you are now able to do that in this stage. This is basically the object of your research inquiry. So hypothesis testing will now either result in either accepting the hypothesis or in rejecting it. So data interpretation follows the analysis of data, and it finally is enabling you to test your hypothesis. After all these stages, all these steps that you have already conducted, now is the time to write your research report. So writing a research report basically is carefully thinking and going back to what you have already studied, what observations you made in all these previous stages, the kind of problems you face, the kind of research reports which you have studied, the data collection which you did, the kind of problems you faced during the data collection, maybe the analysis, the interpretation, what you got, and finally whether your hypothesis which you had formulated right in the beginning, whether that was accepted or rejected. So all these forms the part of your research report. It is again divided into different parts. It has to be in a proper manner, in a proper format. It involves all these categories, all these formats, sections: introduction, literature review, the designing or the methodology, the results, and ultimately the conclusions. The conclusions or the suggestions which you make in the end of the research report is finally what is going to be your takeaway or the reader's takeaway from your research report. I hope you found this session useful. Thank you for listening in.